To cover all things crime, history, and politics, we are at the desk. I'm your host, Katie Karkenegg, and in today's episode, we will be talking about the potential government shutdown, the SAVE Act promoted by President Trump, the birthplace of Memorial Day in Boalsburg, and the reported abduction of Nancy Guthrie. Now, come take a seat with us at the desk. Welcome back to ATD. First, it's time to send it over to the politics panel to discuss the potential shutdown as well as President Trump's SAVE Act. Over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Kitty. A shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security is looming, and negotiations between Democrats and Republicans to strike a full-year funding deal have stalled. We will also be discussing the SAVE Act, which requires proof of citizenship when voting, as the president calls for to nationalize elections. To start, though, I want to wish everybody here a happy early Valentine's Day, and I wanted to introduce our newest member of our panel, Tristan Kilgore. Tristan, welcome. I'll start with you. The shutdown could happen in 3 days now. What do you think of the Republican Party's strategy going into it?
Absolutely. I'm very excited to join you all, but I'm not too excited about the prospect of this new shutdown. Though I do think the Republicans are taking the right move here, because if you look at the historical record, 9 times out of 10, the party that initiates a government shutdown to change policy doesn't actually succeed in changing the policy. So what happened in the fall, the Democrats did not get what they wanted at the end of the day after this record-setting 43-day long shutdown. And especially in this case, if you look at DHS shutting down, it's not going to impact ICE. ICE and Border Patrol has been funded through the One Big Beautiful Bill until the end of Trump's term. So what's going to be affected is the rest of DHS's different departments. And so that's going to be the Coast Guard, that's going to be FEMA, that's going to be TSA. And this is really going to impact our national security and the day-to-day lives of Americans. And so because of that, it's not going to turn out too well for the Democrats if they push for a shutdown here.
Yeah, I think that it's imperative that we look at exactly what Democrats are asking for, because as we know, what they are requesting is what a lot of Americans have been vocalizing within the past few weeks at protests. John Thune expressed still a form of optimism that they would be able to reach a conclusion by Friday, and I think that's hopeful.
Yeah, I mean, what the Democrats are asking for is a laundry list of 10 demands by Friday, which seems practically impossible. Hakeem Jeffries says that he'll accept nothing less, but John Fetterman of Pennsylvania has said he knows that isn't possible. And when you look at the things they're asking for, no masks and body cams, as much as maybe that would be nice and to many necessary, it isn't a nationwide law anyway for police officers to do it. So it'd be interesting if the federal law superseded that in some sense. So I would find that hard to believe that would happen.
Honestly, I do think those things are necessary. And I think the people are speaking out. The people want no masks and body cams. Marist poll just came out saying 65% of registered voters believe that ICE has gone too far. And I think Republicans need to tread lightly to make sure that they're garnering that public support.
I would like to point out, going back to what you said, Tristan, is that Democrats offered a certain stopgap deal to fund FEMA, to fund the TSA, to fund these services aside from the DHS, the specific DHS department, but Republicans rejected it. I think what Democrats really want here is they want sort of accountability for ICE agents. And they have that laundry list of 10 demands, which I don't like. I agree with you, too, that no way it'll all be agreed upon by Friday. We'll likely be heading into a shutdown. But it's like Gracie said, the American people have shown a lot of support for unmasking ICE agents and for establishing accountability within ICE. Because what we've seen are these sort of not well-trained ICE agents out in the field making mistakes time and time again. And what Democrats just want are some guardrails, some accountability.
Well, I would argue that, if we want to do this, like, hey, let's cut a deal, then we also need Democratic leadership to say to the governor, to say to the leaders in each state that in these Democratic states that you need your local and state law enforcement to help ICE out. That's the way this moves.
That's part of the 10.
And this is how it moves. This is how it moves smoothly. We saw in West Virginia, no one even heard about ICE operations in West Virginia, arresting and deporting soon to be over 600 people. No one heard about it because there was an agreement between law and state, with state and local law enforcement, and it went smoothly. And that's the problem. But to your point about accountability, it's hard to put. Yes, there should be accountability, but at the same time, when we talk about these masks and the reason that they're not doing some of these stuff, people are hunting these people down. There's some radical people in this country that will go and risk their lives and their livelihood to go and get one of these ICE officers. So it is hard to justify it when people are so animated about anti-ICE.
I think it's important, though, to acknowledge the fact that President Trump's approval is at a low right now. People are severely outraged by what's happening with ICE on both sides. And I think that is a denial of that or a rejection of that in this DHS funding is a rejection of the American people and what they want. That's what I would argue.
I mean, I understand why there is an outrage in West Virginia. They're a red state. They probably all support most of the actions that ICE are taking.
And
Also, a lot of what happened in West Virginia didn't get a lot of coverage, but that doesn't mean that there was stuff that was happening that wasn't following due process, and people weren't arrested that shouldn't have been arrested or taken into ICE custody that shouldn't have been taken into ICE custody. I mean, Moshannon Detention Center is about 40 minutes from here. It's the largest detention center in the Northeast. And this is where a ton of people from specifically West Virginia are being held right now. And there's not a lot of information going on. I wouldn't say that's something to celebrate.
yes, even if it's sorry. Even
Well,
if it's, no, you can go.
All right. Well, I think ICE has been very responsive to a lot of these calls. I think we've seen some changes in policy. They just announced that they're going to be rolling out body cam to all their officers across the country, starting in Minnesota. And so when they get funding like this package, they're able to implement changes like that. And I don't think the best way to go about implementing those changes is just to say, we're going to shut down the government. We're going to withhold, opportunities for people to get funding for certain agencies that are very important, like TSA. And we're going to restrict that because we want some policy changes. The best way to do that is going to, the president, going to Secretary Noem and saying, hey, look, the people are outraged about this, because when people speak out about this and they go and they talk to them, they're able to get concessions and they're able to make an agreement on what is best for the country and how to enforce these laws. And so, ICE does have this responsibility. They have this mandate to carry out deportations. This is the law of the land. This is what Congress has passed and ordered the president and ICE to carry out. And so if you want to see changes in how that is, the best way to do that is going and talking to them instead of restricting our ability to carry out DHS's other missions.
But
just
isn't
a
that
trust.
what protests do? That's
And
literally
that's what's happened. And now you see the change in policy.
Right, but would you say that shutting down a government would be the best case scenario for an anti-ICE movement? When we look at government shutdowns and you look at Hakeem Jeffries and Senator Schumer, who usually are the ones who are pushing this, it doesn't go well. And to your point of Trump being at a low approval rating, everyone's talking about the midterms, and no matter what conversation we're in, it always circles back to the midterms. If he's at a low approval rating and the Democrats are slowly inching up to what could be a historic win, a very big blue wave, why risk it in shutting down the government for more things for people to run on? That's just my mind. Everything that I look at in 2026, no matter what it is, unfortunately, it comes back to the midterms. Do you want to risk political, ratings for a shutdown that's probably not going to do what you want it to do?
The polling does show that most people find the Democrats are not to blame for the most recent shutdown. So I feel like they gained a little bit of capital there. But like Tristan, like you were saying, or I have a question for you, actually. Do you think Trump is going to make any of the 10 concessions that both Schumer and Jeffries would like?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen he's open to negotiations. The White House and Senate leadership sent back a list of their different agreements where they're able to make concessions. The Democrats rejected that. I think that's because they want to go to a shutdown. They think it'll be beneficial for them. Historically, I don't think that's the case, but I know that Senate Republicans are open. They've said as you mentioned, they're optimistic about finding a deal. They want to make an agreement to get DHS funding, so there's not a shutdown, so they're able to carry out their mission. And so I think they're looking to negotiate, and the Democrats just need to come to the table.
I just think it's the fact that we need to keep repeating there are masked armed agents patrolling the streets, taking most people who are here legally or under a pending immigration case. That's absurd. We've never seen anything like this before. There's a masked militia patrolling American streets. And that's why I think it's not something that can just be simply negotiated. They can't keep funding this. They can't keep supporting this.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think that's dangerous rhetoric. It comes back to today, listening to the Senate hearing and, talking about comparing them to the Gestapo. This is not.
You can't blame people for making parallels.
You can make the parallels, and the ICE, the person who runs ICE was talking about it today. But to say that all of them are militia, they're carrying out, like you said, the law of the land. And yes, there have been many cases of potentially arresting an American citizen,
most.
but they've been it's not most,
not citizens,
but not most. And in the end of that, they've been released within hours or a day. So it's just kind of what happens, unfortunately. But to say that they're just like this crazy lunatic group, I think that's a very dangerous
Do you
rhetoric.
think they need better training?
I would agree that there needs to be better training, but to say that
the
they're
man that shot Renee Good was in a different vehicle-related accident a couple weeks before. Should he have still been in the line of duty, or should it have been trying to go through not courses, but sort of like a recovery period before being sent back into the line of duty?
We can debate. Mr. Peretti was simply not good, and horrible and a tragedy. But when it comes to Renee Good, again, another tragedy, but it can be argued with the intent with her and him. And I'm not going to come to a conclusion right now based on evidence I don't have.
I think that what people are asking for is that law enforcement be held accountable. And I think that's coming from not just Democrats, but people protesting in general. I think that should be accounted for. And I think Republicans are partially, they agree, and they want to compromise and stuff. And I do think that some Democrats are more reluctant because of what has happened in the past to trust that Republicans are going to take the initiative to hold all these ICE agents accountable. And I think that's a perfectly fair hesitation to have.
And the deal that Trump sent Democrats, I think it was Saturday or even Sunday, it wasn't of anything. Nothing of substance was in it. They made no promises, nothing like that. They haven't disclosed all of the details
Right.
of that plan yet. But Democrats, they want something out of this. They want, whether it be body cams. A lot of the issue right now is if this all goes through, ICE will be able to continue entering private property without permits or without a warrant.
And I think the lack of detail is what discourages Democrats from approving this. And I like that's delaying the process even further. I think it's unfair to say that this is entirely on Democrats. And I don't think the ball isn't just in their court. I think this is a compromise that both of them have to come in the middle for.
I think this is the first counteroffer. This is how negotiations happen. You're not going to send a fully fledged out draft of a bill as your first counteroffer. This is how negotiations happen. And I think we've seen accountability. There's full investigations taking place into both of these Minneapolis shootings.
Independent investigations or investigations from within Department of Homeland Security? Because we can't really call those independent anymore.
Well, I think you've seen that there is a lot of scrutiny on this. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it's an independent investigation. I know that there's, a certain office within DHS that looks into these cases. That's not a part of ICE. And so this is a separate, part of DHS that's looking into it. And you've also seen that the reason for a lot of these changes, where you saw under Obama, where he deported more people than President Trump did.
Chief deporting
and
officer.
guess what? ICE didn't have to wear masks during that time. Why is that? It's because there's now an 8,000% increase in death threats against ICE agents. There's a 1,300% increase in physical assault against ICE agents. So you're seeing a change in behavior of people in the media, of politicians demonizing ICE, that you didn't see during the Obama administration. Even though he was deporting more people, there were more fatalities, and there were more issues of mixing up, perhaps legal immigrants or citizens with illegal immigrants. And so we're seeing it's a change in the culture and the change where people are treating law enforcement. And that's why you're seeing these policy shifts to do something a little different than it's happened in the past.
Yeah, to your point, this isn't new. This is not something new. It's just seen better. It's just seen in a more of a microscope under Trump. But to your point, Obama was called the chief deporting officer. He deported 3.1 million Americans. There were 50 plus deaths in a year. It is not right. But to scrutinize the Trump administration, let's look at the Democratic leadership as well. And why all of a sudden are you concerned? It all comes back to this Trumpism.
Democrats are a lot more able to criticize their own side than I feel that Republicans are, especially when it comes to this. And I feel like most Democrats I know too, will go, yeah, what Obama did was also bad. And it's that easy. What Obama did was bad. What Trump is doing, they also see as bad. But unfortunately, we have to move on right now. We got to talk about the SAVE Act, which is expected to be voted on within the next week or so. The big part of this act is all about the proof of citizenship when going out to vote, whether it be a passport or through an ID with a combination of a birth certificate or through a real ID account. Gracie, tell me, what do you make of this?
I think it's ridiculous just because like it would just disadvantage so many people, especially like birth certificates themselves. Many of Americans don't have a paper birth certificate on hold or one at all, and 84% of women who marry change their surname, meaning that like millions of American women wouldn't have a valid birth certificate to bring to the polls.
Well, you need a valid ID to drive, to drink, to go into an airport. When you look at here from the Pew Research Center, 83 of U.S. adults support the requirement of some ID, with 71% of Democrats and 95% of Republicans. I think it would be too quick and irresponsible to implement it in 2026. But there's really, I've not heard a very valid argument of why we shouldn't have IDs to vote. And I also think, though, in this case, there should be some bipartisan agreement here where we can put some more trust into elections again. And I think part of that would be having IDs. But then the other token of this is I think it should be a bipartisan bill where both of them work on it for the next 2 years so they can implement it. But at the end of the day, I just haven't really heard a great argument about why we shouldn't have IDs in voting when you need it for so many other things.
Sorry, go ahead. Okay, I'll go. I think, I haven't really heard a good argument as to why there should be all these requirements. There's no evidence of widespread election fraud, and this would just make it harder for people to go out and vote. I think it's especially important to know people in rural areas, everything that has to do with mail-in ballots, especially, like, this is extremely limiting, and if anything, it disencourages Americans to feel the motivation and have all the access to go out and vote.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I disagree with you. If you look at some of the states that have implemented this proof of citizenship requirement, New Hampshire is the fifth highest voter turnout based on percentage, and they have proof of citizenship for registration. And to talk about the concerns that you have, they are actually taking into account this in their legislation. They're making additional pathways for people to be able to prove their citizenship, even though they don't have their birth certificate or they may not have the proper identification, and to make a process where actually counties are able to approve you for your citizenship and your voter registration, even if you change your name. So they hear these concerns and they're taking into account those in the legislation. So this is really it's a win because it increases trust in our elections and it takes into account these different concerns that people have.
Should there be distrust in elections? We have little to no evidence of voter fraud. And most recently, a bunch of states were offered to upload their possible voters into a DHS kind of database. They have 50 million people in there so far. They found about 10,000 potential non-citizen voters, also 0.02%, and that number may be inflated itself. A very red county in Florida had logged in 176,000 people into this database. They only found 15 people that were potential non-citizen voters. 2 of them just didn't have the proper identification ready on them, and another 5 of them were able to prove they're naturalized citizens after the fact. So what happens now is that, like you said, there's around 24 million people that do not have immediate access to the identification that is required. And it's not like when you're just driving where you only need just your ID. You also need your ID along with a birth certificate or other proof of naturalized citizenship.
Well, that's why I'm saying it's too early to do it in 2026. It would be too quick of a turnaround. We're now 10 months out, and also state and local states and the local counties are the ones who run their elections, and they've been planning on this for the past, 4 years, 2 years, however long. So it would be way too quick to just run an election with all these new rules. But like you're saying, there needs to be some legislation and some talking about it, which they'll hear these concerns, they'll field the concerns, and then the goal of this would to be so that there is quicker access to things like birth certificates and other ways around this. And to your point of, is there widespread voter fraud? I'm not going to say there's not, but when we look at the conception around it and the idea of if there's voter fraud, there's a lot of people in this country who have an idea that they think there's voter fraud, that there's foreign governments. I mean, look at
Who did that?
We know who did it.
Who did that?
We know who did it. But at the end of the day, 2016, there was the Russian foreign scandal. In 2020, you had the mail-in ballot scandal. Whether it becomes true or not, to me, I don't believe it is. But why not add that extra sense of security that people know that this election is free and is free of tampering and foreign governments and all of that other stuff? Why not?
How does this not scare people out of lines? Someone who is walking to a school event or something like that, and there's a voter registration booth, and they keep thinking, oh, I can't do that. I can't find all my documents right now. Like I said, 20 plus million people do not have immediate access to their documents.
I think it keeps coming back to what Tristan and I are saying about the legislation would have to
be after. Would you propose it be after or before midterms?
That's what I've been saying. It
They're
can't
trying
be
to push out
2026.
now,
It's
so
too,
it doesn't-
it's
They're
too
trying to
quick.
make it now.
It's
Yeah.
not going to happen now. We've seen it.
Well,
There's
they
going to
want
be
it to happen now.
But if there's going to be a filibuster, we've already know that it's going to get denied. But then we can come back to it in 2028. We can start it now so that by 2028 it actually looks good and it is free and ready to go for everyone to get it going.
Well, that is unfortunately all the time that we have for today. The government has until the 13th to either strike a deal to fund the DHS, approve a stopgap measure, or allow a shutdown. Next week, we discuss the conclusion of the release of the Epstein files here at the desk. Back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Ryan. Two of our members, Lauren Perry and Nikolai Wagner, took a trip out to Boalsburg to learn more about the birthplace of Memorial Day. Let's send it on over to them to hear all about their adventure.
This is Boalsburg. You might have seen it on your way to State College, but have you ever taken the time to stop here? If you have, you may have found a town drenched in history, including claiming to be the birthplace of one of America's most celebrated holidays, Memorial Day. The area was first scouted by European settlers in 1764. This is when General James Potter explored Penns Valley. Following the Revolutionary War, settlers like German and Irish immigrants moved to the valley. One of these settlers was a man named David Bull. In 1789, Bull received a land grant and founded Boalsburg, or as it was originally called, Springfield. It was not called Boalsburg until 1820, when the name was changed to honor David Bull. In 1803, David Bull built a stone cabin, which still stands today as the Bull Mansion. It is the oldest remaining building here in Boalsburg and now serves as a museum. In 1853, the Boalsburg Academy opened. It served as a means to provide education for older students. The headmaster of the academy was a man that went by the name James Patterson. Patterson was not only an important figure to his students, but an important figure to the history of Boalsburg. In 1862, Abraham Lincoln issued a call for additional soldiers in the Civil War. Patterson made his intent to enlist public and encouraged his students to do the same. In the end, 127 men from Boalsburg enlisted in the war. Fast forwarding to October of 1864, and the Civil War is in its final months. A girl named Emma and her friend Sophie were headed to her father's grave, Dr. Reuben Hunter. He was a Union Army surgeon that died due to disease. Also heading to the grave that day was Elizabeth Meyer. Elizabeth's son, Amos Myers, was killed the prior year in the Battle of Gettysburg. The three ladies shared their stories of loss, which bonded them together. They had brought flowers to place on the grave of loved ones, but in that moment, they made a decision. They decided to put flowers on every soldier's grave in the cemetery. gesture that recognized all the fallen soldiers for their sacrifice. They agreed to do the same thing next year, but this time on July 4th, Independence Day. Word about this act spread throughout Boalsburg. By July 4th, 1865, Boalsburg residents gathered at the cemetery for a widespread observance. They covered every single soldier's grave, making sure no sacrifice was forgotten. Local historians and citizens of Boalsburg consider this to be the first observance of Memorial Day in the state of Pennsylvania. Similar traditions spread across Pennsylvania in the following years. Memorial Day was officially established in 1868 by General John A. Logan. The original name for the day was Declaration Day. The day was officially coined as Memorial Day in 1971. Memorial Day is still an extremely celebrated event here in Maine. Every last Monday in May, Boalsburg has a parade, an arts festival, a car show, and a fire truck fest. Thousands of people come here each year to celebrate the holiday. From At the Desk, I'm Lauren Perry.
We are once again back at the desk. It's time to send it over to Sophia Tabern to discuss Nancy Guthrie, the missing mother. Over to you, Sophia.
Thanks, Katie. This case has gripped the nation. Authorities in Arizona and the FBI are investigating the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC's Today Show host, Savannah Guthrie. She was last seen at her home in Tucson, Arizona on the evening of January 31st. She was reported missing the next day when she failed to show up to her church Zoom meeting. When law enforcement arrived at the scene, her cell phone, personal items, and vehicles were left behind. Blood was found on the front porch, and investigators also found that her doorbell camera had been tampered with. Just a few hours ago, law enforcement released images and video showing an armed, masked individual on the porch around the time she vanished. Law enforcement have been around Nancy's house processing evidence and searching for information. They were also seen removing a device from the top of Nancy's home. Shortly after Nancy's disappearance, a ransom note was sent to local Arizona media outlets demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin in exchange for Nancy's return. One version of the note reportedly demanded $4 million, later increasing to $6 million if not paid by the deadline. The first deadline was February 5th and the more serious deadline of February 9th, with the threat if not met. Savannah Guthrie and her siblings have made multiple public pleas for information. This case has the attention of the country, and the support for the family has been pouring in. As of now, no suspect has been identified. There has been no proof of life, and the investigation has remained active. The FBI is offering a $50,000 reward. They're still developing the story, and there is more information to come. Back to you, Katie.
Thanks, Sophia. Sadly, that is all the time we have for today. In the meantime, stay updated with ATD on all our socials at PSU at the desk, and let us know what you want to see us cover next. I'm Katie Karkenegg, and we'll see you back at the desk next week.
Thank you.